Hey, what's going on, Guardians? My name is the Black Link, and today is Thursday, February 20th, 2020, which means it's time for another issue of the Bungie Weekly blog, This Week at Bungie Got Jokes. Ooh boy, let me tell you, there's going to be quite a few jokes told over the course of this week's TWAB. We've got some patch notes, sandbox changes, we've got some weapon buffs, a lot of weapon nerfs inbound, and a bit more information about how the Empyrean restoration effort is going. Let's go ahead and dive on into everything we're learning about this week. Now, of course, over the course of this week, we've got Iron Banner going on right now. We finally hit Stage 6 of the Empyrean restoration effort, and now all eyes are on Stage 7. As of the time of this recording, we had donated a total of 6,721,502,200 total polarized fractaline, blowing through, of course, every previous stage of this community event. And with this, we now know what the amount required for Stage 7's completion is going to be. And that hefty amount is sitting at a staggering 9,777,777,700 total polarized fractaline. Meaning we're basically going to have to double the amount of polarized fractaline we've already donated. Now, thankfully, if you've been one of the big major investors in the fractaline stonks, now is the time to go ahead and start donating your returns on investment. If you've been utilizing your polarized fractaline to raise the resonance level of your tower obelisks, and you've been waiting for the perfect time to go ahead and start donating towards this event, this is the time. So if you've been waiting, get that polarized fractaline donated, get your secret emblem in Triumph, and let's get this challenge done. And you know, despite the fact that this is all supposed to be going towards rebuilding the lighthouse, spoilers for next season, why do I feel like the only one getting rich off of this is the spider? Well, we don't have too much time to spend thinking on that because we've got some major sandbox changes covered in this article. Now, in previous weeks, we talked about the major changes, the major rework coming to the swords in Destiny 2 when Season 10 goes live. This week, we're learning about some major incoming nerfs and buffs coming to several different weapon classes and at least a few of your favorite exotics. Let's go ahead and dive on into it. As usual, we get to hear a bit from the Destiny dev team about what they've got in store. This week, we're putting the magnifying glass on weapons. While swords were given a bit of an overhaul in functionality, other weapon archetypes are seeing some finer tuning. Damage values, ranges, and even reload canceling are on the table this time around. We know one of the first questions on your mind will be, is this a Crucible-centric update, or will PvE get changes this season as well? While the following changes will be coming out at the beginning of Season of Redacted, some are in preparation for a new PvE challenge coming later in the season. A new Nightfall difficulty, officially dubbed Grandmaster, will test even the most proficient Guardians. We'll have more details about this new ordeal in the coming weeks, but for now, we have information from the dev team on changes being made to ensure that we strike the right balance between challenge and reward. And I just want to take a moment after that introduction there to prepare you when they say strike a balance between challenge and reward. What they mean is nerfs. A whole lot of nerfs. Starting with everyone's current favorite exotic sniper rifle, Izanagi's Burden. They state that since the removal of auto-reload effects from Rally Barricade and Lunafaction boots, as well as the introduction of a catalyst for Izanagi's Burden, it's seen a significant uptick in use. Izanagi's Burden solidified itself within the majority of in-game builds due to its excellent burst damage, sustain damage, ammo economy due to special ammo, and safety due to being a sniper rifle. And of course, because of this, the Outlaw trait has been swapped out for no distractions to be more in line with the fantasy of the weapon and to ensure the trait on the weapon would still work with Honed Edge. And so, because of this, the animation speed of Honed Edge is no longer affected by the reload stat, and Outlaw has been replaced with no distractions. A pretty major nerf if you were to ask me. That's a pretty big significant hit to the DPS of Izanagi's Burden. Some of you out there might be like, well, they're not lowering the damage on it. Well, we're going to get to sniper rifle nerfs in just a second. Hold on there. But cutting Outlaw out of the game when it comes to Izanagi's Burden means it's going to take you longer to get back into the fight with your Honed Edge shots, which is going to cut pretty significantly into this gun's burst damage output. Really can't say I'm too happy with this at all. But that's not the end here. For sniper rifles, We gave sniper rifles an increase in PvE damage back in Shadowkeep. We're removing that change for a few reasons. Sniper rifles have a lot of utility and safety due to their range, and the increased damage was giving them too much of a leg up on their closer range counterparts. That gulf only widens as the difficulty of any given encounter goes up. The direct changes to adaptive and rapid-fire snipers were to make the differences in the sub-archetypes more impactful again, as well as to give some amount of parity with the adjustment to shotguns and fusion rifles. Yeah, both of those classes are getting nerfed too. We're only getting started here. So, here's the changes coming to sniper rifles. Damage to major enemies and above has been reduced to pre-Shadowkeep levels, so down by about 20%. Adaptive frame sniper precision multipliers have been reduced from 3.25 times to 2.95 times, and rapid fire snipers base impact has been reduced from 100 damage to 90 damage, so nerfs all across the board when it comes to sniper rifles. And I kinda gotta say, I'm a little confused by that. Yeah, snipers had seen a bit of an uptick in use since Shadowkeep came out. I remember the reason why we were asking for buffs for sniper rifles is still because of an issue that hasn't really been addressed too much outside of the no distractions perk. Flinch in PvE is still incredibly frustrating for snipers out there. And I don't exactly know if knocking down the damage almost across the board when it comes to snipers was the best thing to do here. I guess we're just going to have to see in the new sandbox, but I'm certainly not happy with the changes to Izanagis or snipers across the board. But you guys know me. I hate nerfs almost universally. But like I said, we're not stopping there. Next up on the docket, grenade launchers. Are you noticing a theme here? We're going through all of the most popular raid builds. Here's what they had to say. Through a combination of archetype adjustments and new perks being introduced, grenade launchers have been quite powerful ever since Season of the Drifter. We've changed the aggressive frame sub-archetype to the rapid fire sub-archetype to be more in line with other weapons' established conventions, and slightly reduce their effectiveness on powerful enemies to give other weapons some more breathing room. And so they've come up with these changes. Aggressive frame grenade launchers are now rapid fire frame grenade launchers. Rapid-fire frame grenade launchers have had their damage reduced to account for their rate of fire change, but now also have increased reserves. So basically you're going to be dealing a bit less damage, but of course because you're firing a faster grenade launcher, you're going to have increased ammo reserves. Previously, aggressive frame grenade launchers fired faster than adaptive, but had the same damage. And finally, damage to major enemies and above by power weapon grenade launchers has been reduced by 10%. So if you've been loving those spike grenade builds like just about everybody running raids has, you're going to be dealing about 10% less damage with that against powerful enemies in PvE. So nerfs all across the board for grenade launchers there. Especially for those ones that you were probably utilizing for raid damage. Stuff like the Swarm of the Raven fits into that aggressive frame. So those are now going to be rapid fire frame grenade launchers, which is a pretty heavy change if you were to ask me. We don't have too much time to spend lamenting that because this pain train is going on. Although a lot of you are probably going to be happy about this next one. Lord of Wolves is finally seeing an adjustment. The ease of use granted by changes to release the wolves made it very difficult to approach and made the margin of error extremely large. We've pushed the two states apart via accuracy to ensure that the default state is the norm rather than the exception. With this change, Release the Wolves should be used at extremely close ranges against large targets instead of just being a better version of the default behavior. The change they're making here, Release the Wolves, now significantly reduces this weapon's accuracy while active. So basically, if you activate the Release the Wolves perk, they're just making it less accurate, I guess at mid to long ranges. So you're not going to be able to get, well, as many consistent long and mid-range kills as you can, as easily as you can right now. This is an interesting way to handle it. I guess we're going to have to see exactly what they mean by accuracy there when we fire it, when these changes go into effect. I still argue that the only change they needed to make to Lord of Wolves was just to revert the way it worked. Previously, before they made the change to Release the Wolves, you had to get a kill in order to activate that ability. That was when Lord of Wolves became super powerful. I think that was perfectly fine. It left the Lord of Wolves as a strong weapon, but you at least had to get a kill first and, get a bit of a reload in before you could actually start utilizing the insane amount of power that the gun has. I still think that a reversion back to the way it worked before probably would have been a better solution here, but who knows. On to the next one. The last word. When reintroduced in Season of the Forge, the last word became quite dominant due to its extremely forgiving maximum time to kill. We're adjusting the way the weapon works to focus it back as a hipfire based weapon, while also improving that side of the experience for both controller and mouse and keyboard inputs. We've also made it a little less forgiving so that you still have to concentrate on your aim while wielding the weapon. A lot of changes going into effect here. Fanfire now adjusts the precision scaler when hip firing. Fanfire impact values have also been adjusted. Precision hipfire hits, so hipfire headshots, will now deal 68.27 damage, and ADS headshots are going to deal 52.2 damage. Body shot damage for both hipfire and ADS has been knocked down by a fairly significant amount, going from about 50.01 damage to 38 damage for both hipfire and ADS. So you're going to be doing much less damage in terms of body shots with the last word when this update goes into effect. But those aren't the only changes. Additionally, aiming down sights now no longer provides additional effective range or damage falloff, so you no longer get extended range when you ADS with the last word. Next up, they've reduced stability for mouse and keyboard input, reduced the overall effective range on the gun, and to improve the experience, they've adjusted the way target acquisition is handled while hip firing. This is a lot of nerfs for everybody's favorite Western 6-shooter. The last word as it currently is definitely a really powerful primary option, one of the most powerful in the game, but it could only really reach that level on PC where mouse and keyboard really didn't have too much trouble keeping things on target. And I would actually kind of argue that that's probably all Bungie needed to do, maybe just cut down on the range a little bit there and make the gun kick a bit more with mouse and keyboard, or equalize things a bit more with controllers so that the gun's actually usable with a controller. But no, instead we're getting massive nerfs all across the board. We've got damage nerfs for it, we've got effective range nerfs for it for ADS and in general. And they've even reduced the stability for those of you out there using mouse and keyboard. For that one, we're going to have to see exactly how much that affects mouse and keyboard so that you can be super accurate with that. But a lot of nerfs for the last word in this update. Gotta say, I'm kind of surprised by that. But to pair up perfectly with that, we've also got some changes coming to shotguns as well. One issue we've been waiting to fix before adjusting shotguns again was an oddity in the way our aim assist system works with weapons that don't care much about precision damage. As an example for shotguns, at certain distances between players, the aim assist system would prioritize the head, causing the entire spread to deviate from center mass and make the player miss out on the kill. With that issue out of the way, we've made more adjustments to shotguns to give other weapons a little more time to react to them. Shotgun nerfs inbound, everybody. Target acquisition for non-slug shotguns has been adjusted to no longer account for precision locations. Well, actually, that's kind of a buff. Previously, target acquisition could actually cause the player's spread to deviate from the intended aim vector, causing most of the spread to miss. So you should have more consistent pellet spread when you fire shotguns moving forward. Next up, cone angle is now adjusted on a per sub archetype basis and is no longer adjusted by the range stat. And finally, aiming down sights no longer adjusts effective range for this weapon archetype. So ADSing with a shotgun is no longer going to increase your range once these changes go into effect. Big changes coming to shotguns there. I know a lot of people have been complaining about the shotgun aping in Destiny 2 right now. So it seems like Bungie's definitely on your side with that, as these things are definitely going to be a lot less lethal at extended range. Now, speaking of lethality at extended range, fusion rifles didn't escape unscathed either. Similar to the issue noted above with shotguns, fusion rifles also suffered from some target acquisition related oddities that we've since fixed. Most of the changes here are adjustments focusing on the high impact sub archetype, basically your Erentil. Backup Plan was an exotic perk in the original Destiny release, and it was placed on legendary fusion rifles in Destiny 2 due to them being heavy ammo weapons at the time rather than the special ammo weapons they currently are. When weapons were shuffled around in Forsaken, the perk came along with them, and we've decided to adjust it alongside the archetype itself to have it fall back in line with other legendary perks. And so here's the direct list of changes we've got coming to fusions. Target acquisition for fusion rifles has been adjusted to no longer account for precision locations. Just like shotguns, this should help your bolt spread be a bit more consistent. Previously, target acquisition could actually cause the player's volley to deviate from the intended aim vector. causing most of the volley to miss. Next up, damage fall off for this weapon archetype can now floor at 50% damage. Previously, damage fall off ended at 75% damage, so you're going to be dealing less damage at longer ranges now. Effective range and the impact of the optics stat for this weapon archetype has been reduced across the board. And then changes to backup plan. Backup plan now adjusts impact to match the rapid fire sub archetype while active, and charge time is now set to match the rapid fire sub archetype of about 0.85 while active. So basically, if you're running backup plan now, it's going to reduce your impact. So you're going to need to make sure you hit more bolts in order to kill. Which is certainly a change that I heard a lot of people clamoring for across the past couple of months of fusion rifle play. But alright, there we go. Now that all those nerfs are done and gone, let's talk about one archetype of weapons that's actually getting some love. Auto rifles have some damage buffs inbound. Some small tweaks have been made to give auto rifles a small boost in efficacy for the Crucible, though they also influence PvE. The nature of the way Destiny is played tends to have semi-auto based weaponry be more effective in general, and so we're compensating for that with these tweaks. These are fairly modest changes intended to give auto rifles more of a chance in an open fight without attempting to drag the time to kill of the entire game down. I would imagine some people would argue that it probably should be brought down a little bit more. Anyways, here's the changes. The following impact values have changed. For high impact frames, default and precision damage have been moved up to 22 damage for body shots, 35.2 damage for headshots. For precision frames, auto rifles will now deal 17 damage per body shot and 27.2 damage for headshots. For the adaptive frame archetypes, they now deal 15.75 damage per body shot and 25.2 damage per headshot. And finally, for the rapid fire frame, those will now deal 13.4 damage per body shot and 20.1 damage per headshot at optimal range. Major buffs across the board in terms of damage output for auto rifles. This is at least a little bit of good news atop a very, very painful list of nerfs. And if this is across the board, if this applies to exotic auto rifles like Suros Regime and the Monte Carlo, which are already alright weapons in the Crucible, I could see those being pretty darn good when these changes go into effect. So there, we at least have that to smile about. Can't wait to try that out. But alright Guardians, that's it for the biggest changes covered in this week's TWAB. There's a lot of stuff to talk about there. There's a lot of stuff to be unhappy with, and I know a lot of people are probably not going to be too happy with some of the nerfs that were discussed in this video. This isn't the end of the sandbox changes, however. In the coming weeks, we're going to have a preview of how exotic armor is going to be changing, along with tuning to our supers and abilities when the next season of content goes live. So make sure you're staying tuned to learn all about that. But alright Guardians, that's it for the biggest bits of news contained in this week's issue of the Bungie Weekly blog, This Week at Bungie. And those are my thoughts on those changes. Really not too happy with some of those nerfs. Be sure to leave me your thoughts down in the comment section below. How do you feel about some of this stuff? Are you bummed about Izanagi's catching a nerf? Does it seem to you like it does to me that Bungie's just going back to the old school Bungie thing of targeting whatever is the most popular thing in the game and dragging it down a bit? Can't say I'm overly pleased with that. Whatever your thoughts are, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. That's it for this one, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I am the Black Lake. You Guardians, stay frosty.